Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is Monday night. It is time for revolutionary change. I'm Jen Perelman.
I'm Peter Hager, and how are you this evening, comrade?
I am good. I am good.
Yeah, we've got quite a ways to go to having a revolution, but there are parts of the world that seemingly are getting this a lot faster than we are, and we've been pointing out constantly that
Albania.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Albania.
Albania is definitely a country that channels the right energy, but I think it's fair to say that from where we stand and what we've been observing politically for a while is that if you are not willing to stand up on principle, even if you think that things are being shaded in a way politically that you don't necessarily agree with, it is pretty obvious from where I stand, and should be from where anybody else is standing, that if you do not have a revolutionary mindset, you're already lost. We're in
what is that? But what is that? What is a revolutionary mindset?
Well, the mindset of the people, for example, that are finding themselves facing a life sentence because they decided that they wanted to challenge the police state. You could say what you want about ICE, you could say what you want about immigration, but the fact of the matter is, most of us are just pawns in a much bigger thing than whether or not you think millions of people need to come into this country, then need to be removed from this country, and how you want to remove them is extremely violent and volatile. There's not a lot that I could say that would be different between a Kamala Harris administration and a Donald Trump administration, but I think it is fair to say that if Harris was president, obviously there would be nothing of this magnitude when it comes to ICE violence and the cruelty of just trying to kick everybody out, so to speak.
Well, I'm an abolitionist, so it's all a bunch of bullshit to me. And this is just for anybody interested. There can be no revolution without abolition, period. It cannot happen. So for people who think that they're revolutionary, but don't support abolition, you're up there now with Jews for Jesus in terms of contradictory belief system. So be very aware of that.
We have yet to address this significant story. We just haven't had a chance to, but we're going to address it now. So much of what we talk about is devoted to foreign policy, obviously. Not many channels do that, but we do. That doesn't mean that there isn't domestic policy that needs to be addressed, and this is a big one. And I know this is something that's been in your craw, so I think it is important that we recognize, even though Texas has always been, in terms of crime and punishment, Texas has always been at the forefront of the 50 states where they take pride in being cruel with how hard they punish.
Florida's up there. Florida's up there. It's basically the states across the South. Because at the end of the day, capital punishment is an extension of lynch law. So it makes sense that it would be more prominent in the South.
Yeah. And as what democracy says, it is unmerciful. And that's basically what it is. Texas anti-ICE protesters convicted of terrorism charges, sentenced to at least 50 years in prison. Some, I think, were as high as 70 years in prison. Now, will this hold? Will there be appeals? Obviously.
Oh, there's already appeals. Yeah. The appeals are already, there are already appeals. And this is something that we had meant to get to last week or whenever this happened, but so many other things have come up. But this is by far I would say, most severe abuse of power we've seen in this country thus far regarding First Amendment. This is out of control. And I do not think that it will withhold on appeal. I was not in the trial, so I don't know what the grounds are that they're citing for appeal. But this, to me, is a violation of the Eighth Amendment. So, and if nothing else, and I'm sure there's a myriad of other statutes and codes that it is also a violation of, but This violation of the Eighth Amendment, for people who did not know, that's the amendment against cruel and unusual punishment.
Yes.
And for First Amendment nonviolent protest. So, right, exactly. This is where we're at.
Activists accused of being part of Antifa get long prison terms in case seen as test of Trump's crackdown on dissent.
You know what? Let's do a poll. Because if Antifa is anti-fascist, everybody chime in the chat if you're Antifa. And if you are, can you let me know where the global or the national headquarters is, or where the meetings are? And, you know, do we get to have like representatives on a board? So exactly, right? So, I mean, exactly. We're all going to be Antifa. It's so absurd. This is so silly.
Go for it.
A group of Texas protesters convicted of terrorism charges received unusually harsh sentences of at least 50 years in prison in a closely watched case that was widely seen as a test case of the Trump administration's efforts to crack down on dissent. After a 3-week jury trial, the 9 activists were all found guilty of a slew of criminal charges stemming from a 4th of July protest at an immigrant detention facility in Alvarado, Texas, south of Fort Worth. So this is from last year. The demonstrators arrived late at night with a plan to set off fireworks as part of a noise demonstration to show solidarity with those detained inside. A few of the protesters spontaneously broke off from the main group and vandalized cars in the parking lot, a guard shack, slashed the tires on a government van, and broke a security camera. When a police officer arrived on the scene and drew his weapon, because that sounds like a weapon would be needed for somebody, you know, messing with a camera. One of the activists fired an AR-15, hitting the officer in the shoulder. The officer survived. Benjamin Song, who fired the gun at the police officer, was sentenced to 100 years in prison. Song was convicted of attempted murder of an officer of the United States, as well as firearm and explosives charges, because fireworks are explosives, even though you can buy them everywhere. He was also convicted of riot, providing material support to terrorists. He faced anywhere from 20 years to life. Zachary Evitz, Autumn Hill, Savannah Batten, Elizabeth Soto, and Megan Morris were sentenced to 50 years in prison.
For doing what?
Maricela Rueda, another demonstrator, was sentenced to 70 years in prison. All 6 were convicted of riot, providing material support to terrorist and explosive charges. Rueda was also convicted of corruptly concealing a document or record. I would need further explanation. They were acquitted on attempted murder and firearms charges. So let's understand this. They were acquitted of the more severe charge. That's how it works. That the attempted murder would have been the highest charge of these charges, right? And they were acquitted of that. And yet now they're looking at 50, 70, and 100 years.
Yeah, the only person who I don't have really any sympathy for is Benjamin Song, who brought an AR-15 and fired it at the cop, and he hit him. If you're going to do that, and you're going to do it on, if it's federal grounds, you're going to, especially in Texas, you're going to get what you're going to get. But if these guys are protesting and the whole purpose is to deter people from exercising their constitutional rights, again, the culture war and the division of left versus right has grown so demonstrably over the past generation that the attitude is, well, they're a bunch of leftist hippies, so they get what they deserve. And that's the attitude, especially in a place like North Texas, which is extremely conservative.
Which is funny, though. Wait a second, because there's a bunch of leftist hippies carrying some firepower. So
that's the whole thing about Fred Hampton and what his movement is all about. People can tolerate blacks getting uppity as long as they don't have weapons. But the second they exercise their Second Amendment rights, now we have a problem. Because now we have a portion of society that is supposed to bear the brunt of the weight, so that way capitalism can continue on. And as we know, the whole purpose of this is cruelty. And as somebody's pointed out in the chat, and I think it's very astute, the thing you also have to remember about these facilities, these ICE facilities, these private prisons, these are for-profit institutions. It isn't a question of whether they get it done, like Crocodile Alley or whatever they were called.
Alligator Alcatraz.
Alligator Alcatraz, whatever. And so as a result, one of the more unheralded aspects of why that was so significant is that this is all being done by the likes of Geo Group, which is why we went ham on Wasserman Schultz when she's standing outside the facility off of I-75, claiming that she really cares about this, yet she has profited exponentially from investing in these very facilities. So the hypocrisy knows no bounds, and this is another example of how you could argue about education. You can't argue about healthcare. I won't even stand for it. But the idea that you think that there is any justification for profiting over corrections just goes to show you how stupidly privileged you truly are.
Okay, so do you want me to explain these sentences? Because now I understand why they're so long just from looking at here. So for people who do not understand this, most often judges will sentence defendants for separate counts concurrently. Here, they stack them consecutively. Now, what people need to understand, and I should know that not everybody understands. So let's say you're charged with 3 different crimes and you get convicted for all 3 of those crimes. And let's say all 3 of those crimes carry a sentence of 10 years. Well, you could be serving the 10 years for all of them at the same time. That would be concurrent. Or they can have it where you have to serve each one consecutive. So the difference would be whether you're serving 10 years or 30 years, right?
Interesting.
That's the difference. So it's significant. And apparently this is what happened, but we have an extremely compromised judicial branch as everything else right now. So the sentences handed down today made clear that Antifa terrorists, such as us, who attack law enforcement and federal facilities will face swift and uncompromising justice, said President Snow as he addressed the Capitol. Their violent extremism has no place in our country. And the Department of Justice will continue to aggressively investigate, disrupt, prosecute those who threaten Capitol enforcement officers or undermine the rule of law. In a statement, President Snow, I'm just kidding, I can't help myself. In a statement, Song said he had fired at the police officer because he had his weapon drawn and Song believed he was about to shoot a protester. All right, this is where I lose interest in the back and forth because I don't really care. Okay, so we can take this down. The point of this is that what they have done is they have taken crimes that would not normally be enhanced to the level that these were enhanced, and they're able to do so by linking it with terrorism.
Right.
So this, and again, this is the kind of shit that goes back to the Patriot Act. This is the kind of shit where W was able to label somebody an enemy combatant just because, and then that person no longer is owed 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights, which is the same thing that's happening here. So you're tacking on just your subjective commentary that this is terrorism, almost like adding a hate crime, a hate crime enhancement is what that essentially does. It enhances something that was a felony. And they know it's silly, and they know it's silly.
Well, that's the name of the game. The name of the game is cruelty. That is what they are. That's what they've set out to do. That's what they are doing. However, it is important to highlight, and this has been well documented with our friends over at Status Coup. Jordan Cheriton has been covering this nonstop for months now, quite frankly. The protesters are not going to stop. If you think this is going to deter people, it's not, because there are
Oh,
too
no.
many people now who recognize what's happening in this country. They understand the significance of this. If you remember, at an ICE facility recently, one of the stooges decided to run over one of the protesters with their car. Well, here's what happened as a result of that.
2 days, literally 2 days after being run over by a car, Alex James is out here saying, "You can't kill me. I'm going to come back here anyway."
This is the communication that not enough people are awake. Our country is in distress. Clearly, we have over 200 concentration camps in all the major cities. Chicago, LA, Oregon has them, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York. They're in your backyard right this second. Cruel to the point where they will run a lady over for waving a fucking flag. That is the senseless, unnecessary aggression that we deal with here because they feel like it.
The car didn't stop to see if you were okay. Nobody from Geo Group stopped to see if you were alive.
Our
Geo Group. Yeah, Geo Group is so concerned about like the well-being of others.
Well, the second you hear Geo Group, and for those who don't know, Geo Group is the biggest private prison investor in the United States and a major funder of Wasserman Schultz's political career. I always like to
And
point
a
out.
ton of people, let's be real. Okay,
Absolutely.
Geo Group is the largest private prison contractor in the country that I know. I mean, there's probably a lot of subgroups, but Geo is pretty massive. But yeah, I don't think that like concern for humanity is at the top of their mission statement.
Remember, so much, if not all of this, is always based on profit. This also speaks to why, for example, McConnell was always so hell-bent on ensuring that they were always getting the judges in. And one of the most important aspects of getting these for-profit conservative judges into positions of power, they hand down the type of sentences that allow Geo Group to continue making exponentially large sums of money. Everything is always connected to capital. That's the thing I want people to understand. It is not about whether you are a religious zealot, although that does matter to them, but at the end all be all is always about how can we extract the most amount of money by any means necessary. There is no line that cannot be crossed. And for-profit corrections is one of the most insidious things in the world. And we're the only country that has this, as far as I know. I think this is very unique to the United States.
Yes, it's one of those, we're number one on that issue. We're number one. So,
For sure.
Community ran to see if I was okay. A lot ran to try to stop the car, and the gate opened and the car disappeared. A report was filed, and I hear that detectives came and visited the space, and I have not heard from anyone since. The hospital visit was interesting because the doctors, they actually had to put masks on because the pepper spray that was coming off of me was so strong that everyone started coughing. After the hospital visit, I need us to go get a ton of food, head back to Delaney Hall and stand with the people and community. I need them to know that they couldn't take that away from me, that they couldn't take that away from us. Like, you don't get to make me stand down just because you felt like it. This is the apathy of the nation allowing it to occur. People need to wake up. People need to stand up. People need to say something. Imagine being taken from your family, being taken from everything that and you're building, your dreams, your goals, and being thrown in here so that you are another body making millions of dollars for a private prison.
She's right.
Right. And when we look at these cases, like the terrorists, the protesters that were just convicted of obscene sentences, with the exception of the man drawing a firearm, okay, which, arguable if it was self-defense, defense of others. But I suggest that the things that they're doing are in self-defense and in defense of others, because what they are doing is standing up for all of us. That's what they're doing. They're standing up for all of us because none of us are free until all of us are free. And these facilities are not going to only be housing the immigrants. They're not. And we've been saying this for a long time. It starts there, but it's going to creep its way up. And
Yeah,
the next thing you know, all of us Antifa affiliated people get denaturalized and thrown in camps. So yeah, it does matter. And yeah, and I am all of those things that they did, all of that vandalism, all of that stuff. Yes, please. Yes. More of that. That's direct action. That's what we're talking about.
yeah.
So, and yes, and I am specifically speaking of property damage. I am specifically speaking of direct action, property damage that interferes with capital. Yes. That's what I'm saying. I do not consider that violent anywhere near the level of violence that the capital is creating that's causing that to be the response. So,
but is that entirely surprising, though?
What entirely surprising?
Is that it's surprising that now people are starting to understand that when you have no guardrails, when you have absolutely nothing in the way of ensuring that there is a balance between the social needs versus the economic needs, that if everything is all about profit and that there is no line that cannot be crossed, and that eventually what you realize is humans, animals, etc., all become a commodity. Everything's commodified, so everything that is done is based strictly on how much money can you make.
Good. I'm glad. This says the GEO employee's Newark local was charged with assault by auto. Good. That's an accurate charge, I would suggest. I would also throw in attempted murder as the higher charge in there. Because if you purposefully run into someone with your car, you have reason to believe that it could cause severe bodily injury and or death. And if you do, right. So you could throw that in there too. I would.
Well, we've been saying that, can you get anywhere without being prepared to fight? And I mean, like, really fight. And I don't think you can.
No.
And if there's anybody who has displayed the type of fortitude that is necessary in order to get through or to try to change the fortunes of where we're going right now, it has been the Albanians. They have been forceful in their fight and will continue to be. And as such, we are looking at other countries now and saying, well, are you prepared to do the same? And it appears...
Wait, I want to say something before you go on, okay? Am I telling people to risk 50 years in prison? I'm not telling people to do anything. I'm saying that's what needs to happen in order for capital to respond. That's what I'm saying. That's the inevitable step that needs to happen before we will get anywhere, is to interrupt capital. And nothing disrupts capital more than messing with their profits.
And what's always interesting is that the people who end up doing these things are people that don't really have a pot to piss in. They're just so penis envious of the highest levels of capital. It's like people who fawn over Elon Musk on X because he gives them a like or pays attention to them for 2 seconds and basically thinks that they're Do you realize that there are people on social media that brag about who follows them? Like, oh, a famous person follows me on social media. Like, that's their crowning achievement in life. Like, that's how they're looking at it. And those are the people who defend the system more than anybody else. And it's the people like that that call the authorities on somebody like Luigi Mangione, who thinks that they're doing a service. They're helping. They're helping Big Brother. They're helping the powers that be. They're a good citizen. They're not going to get out of line. Well,
Henry, it's, in theory, but that brings in the potential of people being home, right? Like when we're talking about after hours at big warehouses and facilities where when you know that there's not people at risk, it's a whole different thing. And again, I would reiterate, as I have said over and over again, that the level of violence in any society is determined by the oppressor, not the oppressed. So when people don't like the level of violence, you need to go at whose boot is on the neck of the people that are now rising up violently, because that's where it starts. It starts with the boot on the neck. That's the violence. And then everything that comes from after that is a response to that.
You've said for the longest time that one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter.
Yes.
The Lebanese were not being backed up by Hezbollah, which is directly connected to Iran, then basically Israel and the West will engulf Lebanon. Like they're next. And the whole concept of the Greater Israel project commences. And so the Lebanese people are not having it with essentially what's been proposed as far as Israel taking over the southern portion of the country. They want to wave the white flag, and the people of the country are saying, no, you'll have to kill us all. Like we're not giving in. So senior Lebanese official slams U.S. broker deal with Israel, warns of divisions. You think? Lebanon's parliament speaker, Nabih Berri, a key ally of Hezbollah, on Monday slammed a U.S. brokered agreement between Lebanon and Israel, warning it could lead to attempts to divide Lebanese, and said it would not be implemented. Israeli officials suggested the agreement would move forward in the coming days, but there were no immediate reports of any aspects of the deal being implemented on the ground. Israeli artillery shelled at an area near the border in southern Lebanon on Monday, according to the Lebanese state news agency. And the sound of a drone buzzed over Beirut, Reuters reported. The Reuters Iran, I don't know if that was part of it or not. In comments to Lebanon's Al Akbar newspaper, Berri described Iran-U.S. talks as the only realistic opportunity to secure Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon, and that any attempt to separate Lebanon from the U.S.-Iran track would prolong Israeli occupation. Essentially, the deal that is on the table right now that little Marco is touting, and again, anything Rubio is supporting, you should reject, is basically, we will stop bombing the shit out of you if you just give up southern Lebanon. And there are people in the Lebanese government who are like, oh, yes, master, just take our land.
Yes, there are always going to be people that are willing to sell out their own in honor of the, empire. We will always see those people. But what's interesting, and you look at this, so just always pay attention to who's actually negotiating, right? So these are negotiations between the U.S. and the government of Lebanon. That's not who's fighting. Neither of those two parties are fighting. The people that are fighting are Israel and Hezbollah. Now, Israel can have whatever deal they want with the government of Lebanon, but they're not fighting with them. They're fighting with Hezbollah, and Hezbollah has not been invited to the conversation. Interesting. So it's like two people that are not a party to the conflict are creating an agreement about a conflict that doesn't involve them. That's what this is.
Israel has occupied a swath of southern Lebanon in a war with Hezbollah that began on March 2nd, when the group opened fire at Israel after Iran came under U.S.-Israeli attack. Again, take all of this with a grain of salt. The Lebanon war has been a central part of diplomacy towards ending the wider U.S.-Iran conflict.
It's critical. It's not one of those things where J.D. Vance can just sort of shrug it off and pretend that, oh, we didn't mean for that to be part of the agreement. The situation in Lebanon is the gist right now of that. That's the holdup. So
the Lebanon war has been a central part of diplomacy, again, towards where Tehran has insisted on a Lebanon ceasefire as part of its interim deal with Washington, while the U.S. has sponsored separate talks between the Lebanese and Israeli governments, which Beirut has attended despite Hezbollah's objections.
Right.
Israel has praised the agreement signed by the Lebanese and Israeli ambassadors to Washington on Friday, with Prime Minister Netanyahu saying it allows Israel forces to continue to occupy southern Lebanon if Hezbollah does not disarm.
But Hezbollah is not part of this discussion. You can't make this shit up. You really can't make this shit up.
Hezbollah, which has demanded Beirut quit its face-to-face talks with the Israeli government, has rejected the deal as a surrender to Israel.
Yeah.
Senior Hezbollah official Mahmoud Kamadi said on Monday that the accord was effectively dead already. He said there was no reason to mobilize people in the streets or take any action, as there was no way it could be implemented, he told Lebanese Al Jadid TV.
I don't know how to be more clear. So when we watch our news here and they're talking about these negotiations and talks that are existing regarding Lebanon, please know that those talks are not concerning the people that are actually having the disagreement. Okay, they're not even involved in the conversation. And what this is going to do, and this is going to be one of those little perks that's going to come from this. Okay, what this is going to do is it's going to push the Lebanese people towards supporting Hezbollah more.
Yep.
So, because not all of the people in Lebanon support Hezbollah. Hezbollah, my understanding, is really predominant in the southern part. It was always been there as a response to Ziohel aggression. And so a lot of people in Lebanon are not necessarily Hezbollah supporters, but the people that recognize that Hezbollah is the only thing protecting them from Ziohel, they do like that because their own government is clearly willing to sell them out. So they prefer having somebody fighting for them. And what this is all going to do is just increase the Lebanese people's support of Hezbollah because they're watching their government be willing to sell out their own people. And Hezbollah is the only people fighting for them. So I think this is going to cause what's happening in Albania to be what's happening in Lebanon. That's what this is going to create, that even though Lebanese people don't necessarily support Hezbollah, just like the Iranian people don't necessarily support their government, but they do against us and they do against Ziohel. So keep doing this shit.
This is what I posted a little while ago. The difference of opinion between the people and the government that represents them is a wide chasm the world over, not just here. In Lebanon, as the southern portion of the country is experiencing a similar fate to that of Gaza and the West Bank. To stop the bloodshed, the Lebanese government is preparing to annex the territory to Israel at the behest of the U.S. State Department. As a result, the Lebanese people have responded in a similar capacity to the Albanians with a firm warning to their government. This is our land, and we will overthrow you if you do not reject Israel, full stop. Scroll above.
It's another example of where Western empire really doesn't grasp the connection that people have to land. This is the same thing. The Lebanese people, the Palestinian people, the whole Levant area people, we can't really understand that because most of us have never had that tie to the land, that commitment to their identity is tied to the land. And they're not going to just be okay with their government giving away to the Ziohel that's been attacking them for years and years and years. Just saying, all right, like you could just give them that. Isn't that what they did with Hitler? We said, okay, well, let him take this, but just this. Really? They think, the government of Lebanon thinks that Ziohel is going to be content with anything less than that ridiculous greater Israel design that they have, which, by the way, includes all of Lebanon.
I also want to point out to John Watts saying it's cruel to allow 50 to 100 legals and illegals into the country. I want people to remember something, because this is a huge issue on the political right. If you favor capitalism, and you think that there should be no guardrails, that people do whatever they want, just remember, the people who support bringing in people into this country who are not citizens and never will be, are the people who love capitalism more than anybody else.
Because I'm not understanding that last comment. What does he mean about that?
Referring to this idea of, why we have, why we have these issues with people with the ICE facilities and the violence. And I would just say, just remember,
it's cruel to allow 50 to 100. First of all, okay, John, humans aren't illegal. That's silly. Okay. So, and they're letting them in. I would debate. They don't
Jen,
seem to be really rolling out a red carpet.
Again, you don't believe in borders, and that's fine. But
It doesn't matter even if I believed in strict borders. I believe in human rights.
Correct.
And
Well,
I believe that we don't get to treat people. And again, I've said this, I will debate. I don't give a shit what your stance is on immigration. It doesn't matter. None of it makes it okay to treat people the way that we treat people.
Oh, of course.
Period. So I don't care. And to refer to somebody as illegal only serves to dehumanize people that are already vulnerable, to somehow make it justifiable to treat them like shit. It's called othering. And it's stupid.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Because those illegals and us, we're all on the same team against them.
Remember, if you are, the truth of the matter is, as much as some people don't want to hear this, if you are America first, like if that's what you believe, and I do, and I tend to lean into that as well myself personally, you cannot embrace capitalism as it is constructed. You just can't, because there is no. If you haven't heard the speech in the movie Network by Ned Beatty, he basically lays it out how capitalism really works. There are no nations. There's just corporations, and there is just profit to be made, and you are just a pawn in the grand scheme of things. And unfortunately, it gets back to that old meme, the old Rupert Murdoch meme of the black worker and the white worker, and the white worker has one cookie, the black worker has none, and Rupert Murdoch has all the cookies. And he looks at the white guy and he says, be careful, that black guy's going to take your cookie. And that's basically capitalism. As much as people don't recognize that that's what it is, I've said it for a long time. I will continue to say it. And I'm in commercial real estate. They would have you as slaves if they could get away with it. There is different forms of slavery that still exist. And we employ it still. So just remember, if you can't spot the sucker when you walk into the room, chances are you're the sucker. Chaos in Beirut right now, as you could see, they are not taking this lying down. They are not going to take this lying down. They're going to continue to fight, and it's going to continue to spiral against the interests of capital and, of course, the Zionist state. Scroll a little down a little bit more, Colin, please.
I don't know about you, but I've met Lebanese people. I wouldn't fuck with the Lebanese people.
Crowds have completely taken over the streets, burning tires and blocking roads in fury over the Lebanese authorities signing an agreement with Israel. They say it legalizes Israel's occupation of Southern Lebanon and gives Netanyahu immunity for war crimes. Now, you see, that's the part of the story. And if you could go back to the article, please, Colin, that's the part of the story that I find so perplexing. Why would you sign an agreement that includes immunity for Netanyahu?
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, and again, we're back to the fact that the parties that are signing said agreement are not the parties to the conflict. So I don't know. And for him to be able to have some semblance of what immunity in Lebanon, I don't see what the hell different. I don't understand that. Like, I don't understand if somebody understands what that does for him that he wouldn't have otherwise, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure.
Jen, if you would, please.
The agreement foresees Lebanon's army taking over territory pending the disarmament of Hezbollah, saying this would enable Israel's military to progressively redeploy out of Lebanon. Right. They're gonna leave as soon as the Lebanon's military takes over. Sure.
This time they will.
Right, this time. So Lebanon's army would gradually assume responsibility in pilot zones. Okay, but again, the Lebanon's army is nothing compared to Hezbollah. So now what you're going to see is what Israel's trying to do is they're trying to set up a civil war between Lebanon's military and Hezbollah. That's what they're trying to do.
Okay.
They figure, let them all just kill themselves. They'll kill each other or whatever. And then we'll just take it all over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A senior Ziohel official said the pilot zone process under which troops would withdraw would begin immediately without elaborating. A second Ziohel official said the redeployment from the pilot zones might begin in the coming days. The zones, according to maps published by Ziohel, include the Lebanese villages of Fraun, Zatwar, Al-Garabia, and Gandaria. Oh, please.
Gonorrhea.
Arabic people forget.
Gonorrhea. Gonorrhea is the last one.
It does not, it does look like it says Gandaria, but two Ziohel officials said separately that these areas had been taken by Ziohel forces recently to use as leverage in negotiations. With whom? Who are you negotiating? A satellite image of Fraun taken on June 24 showed destruction to large parts of the village. Berry, head of the Amal movement, described the agreement as diktats. Al-Akbar quoted Berry as saying the most dangerous aspect of the agreement included the potential for it to incite internal division and draw the Lebanese into a confrontation amongst themselves. Who would have thought?
Of course.
Let
them do that and then
the whole
pick pieces. Because if there's one thing we know about the Zio scum is that they don't actually want to fight. They act like they do, but in reality, they are the biggest pussies alive.
They want everyone else to fight for them.
Of
and
course.
Then they just want to go.
Well, Jen, they're chosen.
They're chosen.
You have to understand. Chosen don't fight. The Goyim fight. That's who fights.
This agreement won't be implemented. Of course it won't. It can't be implemented. It can't be enforced. It doesn't involve the people that are parties to the conflict. So
nope.
It's just silly. All right, scroll. The intensity of hostilities in Lebanon in the south has abated this month as Iran has insisted on its demand for Lebanon ceasefire in talks with the U.S., and as Ziohel has scaled back attacks in Lebanon at Washington's behest. I question that. I don't believe that's true. I don't think they scale back anything. And then maybe they say, okay, well, we'll scale back a few people in Lebanon, but then we'll just take out a few more people in the West Bank or bomb a few more babies breastfeeding in Gaza. And so there's really no scaling back. Yes, the agreement's dead on arrival. It's silly. The U.S.-Iran interim agreement requires both countries and their allies to end military operations on all fronts, including Lebanon. Iran is also seeking Ziohel withdrawal from Lebanon. Isn't that amazing that the country that we say is the leading sponsor of global terror is the country demanding that the country that is committing global terror stop committing global terror? Seriously.
Israel strikes Hezbollah targets. The Lebanese government sought face-to-face talks with Israel earlier in the war, despite objections from Shiite Hezbollah, reflecting divisions over the group's decision to join the conflict. The government has pursued a policy aimed at securing Hezbollah's disarmament since last year, after the group was badly weakened during a previous war with Israel in 2024. Israeli forces seized a self-declared security zone stretching into southern Lebanon during the war, citing the need to shield northern Israel from Hezbollah attacks. The Israeli military said it destroyed a Hezbollah tunnel in the south overnight and struck 3 Hezbollah command centers in southern Lebanon on Sunday in response to violations of a ceasefire by Hezbollah. Okay, so in conclusion,
and let's not agree to a ceasefire.
There is nobody, and I mean nobody, who breaks ceasefires other than Israel.
Us.
Well, yeah, I mean, you said that we're one and the same, and that's true. But
we violate every agreement, pact, treaty, truce, negotiation. We have violated every single thing we have ever agreed to with anybody, ever. So, yeah.
Well said. I am a good goy, I am. Very well stated. It is an unfortunate reality that we have come to this, but this is a lesson to be learned, because I'm not saying that it's going to end up on our shores in the same extent that it obviously is in West Asia, but do not think for a second that we are not subjected to the whims of many of the risks that happen when you give an inch, they'll take a mile. And in the United States, we are faced with the reality that on the one hand, there is this, and we're going to talk about this with Ida Susser, that there is this sort of sweeping change that's happening in New York right now. And it is promising because, as I have said to Jen, I say to you all, the only two people, well, I'll say three. There's three people in the United States who are conducting themselves the way that you need to be politically in this moment. Zohran Mamdani is one, Thomas Massie is two, and
let me guess, Fetterman.
No, the opposite of Fetterman. Shama Sawant is three. And those are the people who are truly standing on principle and doing the things that need to be done because they are recognizing that this is a revolutionary moment. Whereas a person who still thinks that she's cock of the walk and still the person who's in charge of New York politics had this to say on MSDNC over the weekend.
Just a part of what she said. I take your point. Do you still feel, though, if Democrats win back the House, that Hakeem Jeffries is the right person to lead?
You know, I've engaged in many conversations with Leader Jeffries, and for me, and we have a broad caucus, right? For me, I have
word salad. Answer the fucking question, Alex. Answer the question.
This is one of the big, there are many reasons why it is a complete non-starter that she thinks that she's going to be president of the United States, aside from the prospect of even becoming a senator. What you have to remember is a few things here. Number one, she talks like a slimy politician now, like a full-on slimy politician.
If a slimy politician were also a valley girl with an airhead.
That's a whole other story. I was getting
how she talks. That's how she talks.
Well, what I'm saying is that I'm not even addressing her diction, her expression. I'm not talking about that. Okay. That is part of it for sure. I was alluding to that point, but what I'm first saying is that she talks like a politician that is bought by corporate special interests, that has to think about everything that they say because they don't want to step on somebody's toes that, oh my God, I might actually offend this person if I say this. See, that's not acceptable.
But that's the political climate that we have in this country. That's the system that she's working in. So you're expecting, or how can we expect people to behave different than what is expected of the system, in the system that they're working in? You can't. You can't. And the people that do end up losing their seats. That's the point.
So when people are flexing about the fact that she got reelected with an 87%, with 87% of the vote, again, there is no money being put into that race. There is no money.
Won with 87% of the vote. Is there another option for them?
Not in a district that's a plus 35 blue.
Exactly.
What do you expect?
Of course she won. That's like the people that for years would say, oh, Debbie keeps winning. Well, yeah. Yeah, you know how easy it is? Do you know how easy it is to maintain incumbency in a primary in a place with that kind of numbers?
It's gerrymandered to that extent.
It's impossible to unseat these people. So to act like that's some big feat is silly.
And when people get on Trump, just remember both parties are doing it. Do you understand that there is a gentleman's agreement when it comes to these states redrawing the maps to make it more and more impossible to have competitive races? Remember, the whole point of competitive races is so that you can actually hold your representatives accountable. The whole goal is to create districts that have no competition. They do not want competition. They want a career. They want to be in the life. That's more important than actually serving. Serving is a byproduct of just being there. But to suggest that, oh, this person's going places, she cannot hold any position above where she's at because she is never going to be taken seriously by people who actually get it. That's the difference.
She's not going to be taken seriously, period. And I've said it. I will keep saying it. If any office that she's going to run for beyond where she is, that's going to require her to be more seen, more visible, on more, it's going to be the same effect that Kamala had. She will only go down in the polls for a lot of reasons, but primarily she's really not that bright. It's just a fact. So,
that one of my priorities in determining and in a leader determination is securing public housing financing for New York City. And Leader Jeffries has made his prioritization for the residents of public housing very clear. And for that reason, I will be supporting Hakeem Jeffries for leader.
I'm sorry.
Can you name one bill that he has ever allowed to come up for a vote just to get an idea of where people are regarding public housing? Because the last I checked, the only person who has done anything to help with the housing crisis in New York is Zohran Mamdani. He's now put on a rent freeze. And as somebody who invests in multifamily housing, let me tell you, if you are not responding to the needs of the people based on what they can afford and the conditions that they're living in,
Make it go away.
Expect nothing less. Like, expect nothing less. And when Mamdani comes out and says he's supporting Jeffries for speaker, keep in mind that there is a distinct difference between the two and why he would say that. Now, my belief is the reason why, and I'm not giving Alex any credit for this, but I'll give more on this much. If there is a reason to support Jeffries for speaker, it's because he's in New York, and there is an understanding, if you will, at this point, that they have fortified their positions to such a degree that if Jeffries does not respond to the needs of that particular part of the country, that if he does not answer to the needs and the wants of Mamdani and his coalition that he's built, that Jeffries is next, that he will be primaried in 28. And I do believe he will be. So maybe that's what will happen. I'm not holding out any hope necessarily that that's how it's going to go down, but
AIPAC Shakur, okay, he's not going anywhere. He's just not going anywhere. I don't see him being primaried. I don't see that getting anywhere near that. And I believe the only reason that he's even in the position that he's in is because they know that he's willing to dance like Bojangles, or he wouldn't have been given that position by Nancy Pelosi in the first place. See, they already knew that he was compromised, because if he wasn't, he couldn't have been in that position. So
you won't hear Alex saying anything about this. I mean, to me, when you, and remember, when Jeffries led this march, it wasn't just anybody that was there with him during this march. Smoltrich was there with them. It's no different if Netanyahu or Gavir was marching. Smoltrich may be the least known of the three, but he is just as evil. And for him to have been there and for no one to have said anything regarding that spectacle, that Israel Day, the fact that they have an Israel Day, I don't care if it's New York City. That's insane.
Well, and I have a problem that there's an Israel, okay? But let's say hypothetically, it's a day for any country that is a legitimate thing. I don't care. You want to have, whatever day you want to have Venezuela Day, have Chile Day, who cares? That's not the point. The point is they do it because they're being purposefully hateful. They do it to rile up people. They do it for that, to be incendiary. That's the point. Because there is no other reason why a country would need to have a day in another country.
Sure.
That's why.
So when people say that there isn't this conflation between the two, or that the two are not one and the same, as you've often said, well, the powers that be have shown time and again that they are one and the same. And that is the battle that we have in front of us, is being able to disassemble this relationship. And, last thought before we bring Ida in, you have some very strong thoughts about what you consider to be Zohran's biggest blind spot as the mayor.
Yes.
And that is keeping Tish on as the current police commissioner. And why?
Yes, that's a concern. And no, I don't think it's a blind spot, which is why it's a concern. If it were a blind spot, then that would be a lot more forgiving to me. My concern is that there was some deal made that allows her to keep that position. Now, what that is, does it involve him running for a bigger office? Does it involve, I don't know. But whatever that is, that deal that was made that allows her to stay in that position, is concerning to me. And her being in that position is concerning to me because, well, she's a fascist. And so I just generally, I'm an abolitionist and she's a fascist in charge of the thing that I don't think should exist anyway. So yeah, we're not gonna mesh. And the fact that he kept her should be concerning to everybody.
Well, if anybody can speak to what is going on in New York right now, Hunter College has been around for a very long time, and it's maybe not talked about to the extent that, perhaps NYU and Fordham has talked about, but it's still a very important historical school in Manhattan. And Ida Susser is not just a professor, she is an author, and she is very well aware of this rising left populist movement that is happening in this country right now. Jen, do you have the full title of the book?
Yes, and we're gonna. So, okay, let me do an official intro, right? Okay, Ida Susser is a professor of anthropology at Hunter College and the Graduate Center, City University of New York, and she publishes on popular mobilizations, social movements. And the book that we're talking about is The Yellow Vests and the Battle for Democracy, Taking to the Streets of Paris in the 21st Century. And if I were back in Florida, you guys, I'd probably be wearing my yellow vest for the occasion, but I am not in my Florida studio, so I have no yellow vest. So, but yeah, we need to figure out how to get some of that juju. We need the yellow vest juju here.
Not to be confused with jujus.
No.
Ida Susser, welcome to Revolutionary Change.
Hi, good to meet you.
Hi, it's so nice to meet you.
That's the New York accent I haven't heard in a while.
No. I lived in New York longer than I've lived anywhere else, but I don't really have a New York accent.
No, you have a foreign accent. Where are you from?
From the UK.
It's not even, I was born in South Africa. My parents went into exile when I was like 5. They went to the UK. So I grew up in the UK and I went to university in New York. So that's
okay. So you definitely
I have like my accent is very hard to figure out for me.
But you have definitely a hand in both continents. So you have an appreciation of what an uprising looks like over there versus lack of an uprising over here. And so talk a little bit about obviously this is a subject that you've covered in the past, but what do you think it was in particular about the Yellow Vest movement that really inspired you to, go into this?
Well, the Yellow Vest movement was really extraordinary. It wasn't normal in Paris or in France. And nobody was quite sure, maybe we know what is right and what is left. I don't know. You figure Occupy was definitely a left progressive movement, but the Yellow Vests was kind of, people were not sure. People were not sure what it was. They had a movement which was like Occupy called Nuit debout, which was young people and recognizable lefties, and it was supported by all the left movements and things like that. But the Yellow Vests was really a mystery, and I had been studying social movements, like you say, in Barcelona and in Paris and previously in New York City. And to me, that was the question they had. And that's why I really decided to concentrate on the Yellow Vests and try and figure out what it was. Because, we have our Trump movements here. We had January 6th, although this was before January 6th. But it could have been the Tea Party. Who knows? So I really, really wanted to follow because people were not sure, even in France. Analysts in France did not agree.
Ida, would you say, this is also one of the biggest differences, I would say, obviously, between the United States and France, is that France has universal health care. Some argue the best universal system in the world. And in the United States, we have the worst for a developed nation. And you would think that one of the primary reasons that the pro-pharmaceutical and pro-for-profit health lobbies contribute maybe more than any other conglomerate on the Hill to stopping any semblance of a single-payer movement from truly taking off is that they realize that it isn't so much about the people having their health care. It's that if they had their health care, they would have freedom of choice. And that choice would be to rebel against their government. And in a place like France, they throw those yellow vests on when they sense that the government's getting a little too cute. And I would think here in the States that that's probably the biggest reason why we don't currently have it. What do you think?
Well, this country has a very long history of fighting healthcare, of, corporate opposition to healthcare. And I think part of it, there's many reasons why we have a rather thin, unsatisfactory welfare state in general. We had battles for the pension back in the 1930s, and you have a reasonable Social Security, but that's under threat all the time. And even when, I think it was Johnson in 1965 brought in Medicaid and Medicare, that was 65, 66, the opposition was incredible. So 50, 60, 70 years, corporate America has fought healthcare, and you've seen it with the opposition to what they called Obamacare, and the way the subsidies have been removed. And people, once they got some kind of Obamacare, they never wanted to give it up. And that's been a problem for the Republicans, the fact that, there isn't much support for taking it away anymore. But this country probably had the most violent opposition to unions, with the Pinkerton Guards for 50 years. So it was the hardest place to fight for a welfare state. And then you had the McCarthy era, called anti-communism. It was anti-everything. It was anti-healthcare. It was anti any kind of move for affordable housing, be called socialist. The amazing thing is that we have Bernie Sanders, or any group that can call itself democratic socialist, because this country has had the strongest opposition to anything like that of all the industrialized countries. It is like the center of violence against the left.
Because we're the capital. This is the capital. We
used to be. We used to be, but in terms of the hubris and the domination and just the constant need to oppress any resistance, that's us. Like, that doesn't come from anyone else, even in countries that are going to eventually take the spot, right? Like, it just doesn't seem to be the vibe. That's our thing. We've perfected it, But I think that it's not just healthcare. It's all of our lack of social safety net. We have no social safety net. People here can't go into the streets. They can't afford to do that. And that is the whole thing that we need to create before we can even consider that. But the problem is there's no time. We're seeing it erupting all over the place, and there is no time. And we do not have matching vests.
Ida, do you believe that Zohran's movement is legitimate? And do you believe it is going to result in more radicalized left activity in New York City?
What I write about the Yellow Vests is that they were along with the earlier one, the Occupy movement, they were building a kind of mixed left consensus. I call it a historical bloc. That's what I talk about. And then I talk about how it was all these different fragments, people fighting for healthcare, but people fighting for housing, and people fighting for post-colonial rights, the immigrants that came from all different parts of the world to France. But all these different movements, Black Lives Matter, they're not all in agreement. Zohran's movement is not in agreement with this, with that, but that it was they were meeting halfway. I call it thresholding. They were meeting on each other's front doorsteps and beginning to understand each other. You know, they were in the same, maybe in the same demonstration, if the environmental movement with the yellow vests. And then maybe the yellow vests ran off in one direction and the environmentalists went in another. But then the yellow vests turned up at the speeches later on. So I think that the movement of the DSA is one of a, has to build also the thresholds across other movements. And I think that's one of the problems very much in any progressive movement, that there's a certain amount of like only our way. And
Ego.
that's the problem of sectarianism that the left in America is famous for. And it doesn't matter which group you're talking about. So I think that what I saw was that the yellow vests, they had experience of getting, they were from the provinces and they had kind of gotten along with their policemen, gendarmes, because they were in little villages and the gendarme maybe wasn't everything, but he was their neighbor, whatever. But then they came to Paris and they found themselves tear gassed and also attacked by what are called LBDs, because the president never recognized them as legitimate demonstrators. So they were hit with these LBDs, which are like non-lethal guns. And they're not like exactly like tasers. You can lose your hand. People lost their eyes, they lost their hands, they lost their feet. And so these LBDs led to a group, hundreds of people among the yellow vests, who they call themselves the mutilated, because they had lost a hand, a foot, an eye. And as they began to recognize the level of violence against them as they marched through Paris, after a year, when Black Lives Matter came to Paris in 2020, because the yellow vests started in 2018. In 2020, when Black Lives Matter came to Paris, the yellow vests joined the demonstrations against police violence, whereas originally, I don't think they would have understood it at all. And one of the things I argue is that people don't come with ready-made ideologies in this group, anyway, not in the groups I studied. They don't come with a ready-made understanding, but they can kind of go in a way that's like bigoted or opposed to other groups, exclusive and stigmatizing other groups. Or when they're angry and they join with, they experience this thresholding, meeting across in different ways, they can learn why they can learn to trust the other group through their bodies on the line, through seeing them, through hearing them. And so this is how people build a historical bloc. But I think it's incredibly important for and that's what I argue in the book, progressive movements that are trying to move towards social justice, to be also inclusive. And I think that's one of the things that the yellow vests really modeled. Yeah.
Yeah. And something that I caught, and I'm not sure exactly what I was looking at that was talking about in your book, the importance of where the populism is coming from. And this is something we noticed here in 2015. So we're having this populist uprising. We're seeing it on the left and we're seeing it on the right. So it's kind of a question is, which way are we going to go? So it's like, do you want Bernie or do you want Trump? I mean, obviously I was a Bernie supporter, but I saw the writing on the wall with that. And I'm just now having this sort of like epiphany that maybe one of our biggest problems in this country with being able to do something like Yellow Vest is because of the duopoly and the fact that there is so little crossover where people can really understand that this is a class war. Whereas I think in countries that have multiple parties, maybe it isn't as tribal and that they're able to sort of consolidate in a class situation that we somehow cannot get here. I'm curious what you think about that.
I think that the way I understand the right wing in this country, there's always been, since, World War II and maybe, I don't know, before as well, a very strong right wing that was based on racism, that kind of was part of, the history of the Civil War, you could call it, and that the South has never had strong unions. You know, there are many ways in which there was always a right wing. And that right wing kind of in Europe and in the United States was kind of squished by World War II. You know, we had the Klan in New York City right before World War II. And they didn't revive in the 50s so much, or that we had McCarthyism, we didn't get the Klan. So I think that there's a history of this kind of right-wingism and, you know, racism in the United States, very powerful. However, I think that what happened, I wouldn't say that it was, I'd say that when it regenerated, it was growing, obviously, but when it regenerated with the Tea Party in 2010 opposing Obama, obviously part of that was racism, but part of it was what I call astroturf. It was funded from political acts, political funding on the right. Mm-hmm. And there was huge sums from the right put into think tanks to generate such a thing. So I kind of think that there wasn't necessarily initially a grassroots populist movement. Mm-hmm. It was a grassroots astroturf movement. Whereas I see the movement on the left, whether it was for Bernie Sanders, Mamdani, you know, Black Lives Matter, feminists, all these different groups, which don't always talk to each other, all these, and don't always like each other. But I see these as coming from the ground up, being grassroots movements. And I think that's a huge difference. And I think that the astroturf had to be created by the right that way, because most people on the ground benefit from better healthcare. Most people benefit from affordable housing. So in Europe, the sort of yellow vests, they were, even though they could have been moved to the right, and there were some in them to start with who were like that, they were never against government taxing for healthcare. They were never, ever against the state support for poor people. Never. They were never, whereas in this country, there's been a riling up, even against your access to, like you're all saying, to a national health system. So that's the real big difference. So what did the LFS say? They said the government is stealing the state by privatizing the healthcare system. We're opposed to privatization. We want the government to give us what we deserve. We want a collective effort to help us live better. And in this country, because of the divisions of race being used by the Republican Party, I mean, previous, you know, we don't have to look too historically, but certainly starting with Nixon, because of the divisions of race being the whisper of the Republican Party, they managed to divide people to say, it's not really for your good. And so they talk about the government as a swamp, and nobody should get any benefits. Now that is really, you know, destroying your own life for some kind of weird racist rhetoric. And that you do not find the same thing. You don't find that in France. People very support their government. They support what they get. They don't support the president because he's taking it away from them. But they're fighting for their rights. They're fighting for their housing. In this country, we're so split among our poor people. People are fighting against some poor people getting healthcare and against some poor people getting housing. And they don't even want the government. You know, that started way back when. And this is a really big difference between the two countries. And that's why, or the two, Europe and the United States. And that's why I think that we need to have not only these thresholding on the left, but we need to have a level of sharing our needs, like what the LFS did when they met in cabins. They blocked highways. They built cabins in road junctions. I think in America it's traffic circles. In England it's roundabouts, and in France it's roundabouts. In the traffic circles, they outside town, like in a mall, there'll be a traffic circle, and they built a cabin there and they met there every night, and they learned about how it felt to be poor among each other. They shared. Like, I can't reach the end of the month. I can't feed my children. I'm a mother who's disabled and just can't cope. You know, they talked to each other. They got across humanly the shame of being poor and the shame of being different. And the Yellow Vests over time amazingly crossed many lines you would never think they could have crossed before. That's what I wrote about. And it was a process over time. Didn't happen all at once.
What notes can we take? Like, you know, I mean, there's got to be some, because the problem on the left can't get out of its own way. We've seen it. Peter and I have seen it on the micro local level and on the macro level. Like, it's silly. And so, like what suggestions would you have for them to recognize that is our weakness?
Well, you know, partly I'm not at all a media specialist, but I think that what was so important was people meeting each other. You know, whatever, like in Minnesota, people were out in the streets and met each other. And they didn't say, well, I come from this party or I come from this. You don't even know which groups those two people that were shot came from. Nobody talks about it. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they just came as neighbors in the street. I don't know, actually. But it's not the main cutting edge of the media point. I think that it makes a huge difference. You can send out as many Instagrams or TikToks or whatever as you want, but only when people actually meet in person and meet in the street and get to recognize each other. I think that makes a huge difference. I think that is part, and that protests have to be seen by the people in them, and they have to see the other people as real people. And I saw this with the trust level. So honestly, I think in France, there's something called the old France, which is people think of themselves as like, you know, they came over, they were there when Julius Caesar arrived and they were Gauls. You know, they have this image of national history and they're, you know. So there are some people who see themselves like that, but there are many, 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 many people in France today who feel discriminated against, who you would call the post-colonial immigration. They're citizens, but their parents were maybe born in Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Afghanistan. They're citizens. Now, that group of the old France and what you might call the new France or the post-colonial France, obviously it's got many divisions. But what I saw with the Yellow Vests, they came out mostly, but not altogether out of the old France, but they set up things like people's houses, which were very mixed. Everybody who came to those houses was very mixed. Some people were very poor. Some people were homeless. Some people were transgender, people of color, as you would say in America. People from different backgrounds, people who in France, you would say they're Maghrebi, they're from the Arab backgrounds, although they're French citizens. They were in these people houses, and people from the old France. And I saw cooperation and collaboration. If you were wearing a yellow vest, which I never wore because I didn't want to misrepresent myself, but if you were wearing a yellow vest, you're with us. And so I think that was a very, very new thing for many of these old French who were coming from the provinces into Paris or into Toulouse, into the different cities. I don't think they had long thought of themselves in relation to the post-colonial population, but I saw it happening. That's why it was so striking with the Black Lives Matter movement that the Yellow Vests came to that. And the same with the environmental movement, because initially, the president had said that the Yellow Vests started in opposition to a tax for gasoline. It was for diesel. And the president said, we're doing this for the environment. And you Yellow Vests, you're really right-wing because you're opposed to the environment. And everybody in France and the world has to understand that they're opposed to the environment. So many people who had worn yellow vests were not in the least opposed. Some were, some weren't, but many had supported environmental measures. But they would say things like, I need my car to get to the train station to take the train to work because you've cut the buses and trains that used to come to my village. What am I supposed to do? Also, you tax the gas for regular gas. And so we all bought little tiny cheap diesel cars because the diesel tax was not taxed, diesel gas. So now you're taxing what we bought because you didn't tax it before. So you're putting us on the spot. It's not us that's opposed to environment. It's you that are inventing this idea that we're opposed to environment. And so they joined the environmental marches. That's the point. And they saw each other. They came to hear. I went to a big march in Paris where the environmentalists were on a big red English bus with rainbow paint and, I don't know, trees and bushes. And they were up there giving speeches. And the yellow vests were there, but they were kind of looking. And there were many environmentalists. As soon as the speeches were over, I think I mentioned this, the environmentalists went very carefully following their march. But the yellow vests never obeyed rules. They called themselves wild. And they went off on a wild march in the other direction where the police would arrest them. They wouldn't say what street they were going down, and they would all just run. That's how the yellow vests were. So they didn't behave like a march, like you would have down the middle of Manhattan. I've been on many of them, environmental marches down the middle of Manhattan. The yellow vests didn't kind of meet that goal, but they had met and heard the environmentalists. And after that kind of meeting, they changed their slogan from, they used to be talking about, we can't get to the end of the month. They said, we can't make it to the end of the month and the end of the world. They put them into one slogan, their own needs for food and their recognition of the destruction of the world that the environmentalists were talking. And that became a yellow vest slogan, but it wasn't there in the beginning. And that's kind of what I saw happening. And I think I saw that happening in Minneapolis, actually. And I think it's probably happened in many parts of the United States that we, like in the opposition to these. I heard that the New Jersey, I think it was a prison that the Trump regime was building for immigrants in New Jersey, and they just backed off because there was too much opposition. I have a feeling that that opposition is very mixed. A lot of it is from the right as well as from the left.
Yes, it is. And I would also say that the right populist movement is very real. And Jen and I joke a lot that revolution in the United States will ultimately come from the populist right because they're the armed part of the country. They actually support the Second Amendment, literally. I think that once you recognize that the system is designed, I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. If the powers that be could have us all living as slaves, they would. Whatever wealth extraction can be done from the masses can never have enough. And I freely admit that I participate in capitalism. I'm in commercial real estate. I have met some amazing people that are investors, and I have met the most cold-blooded bastards that you could possibly imagine that truly believe that the end-all be-all is to get as much money as possible, and it doesn't matter how many throats you have to step on in order to get there. So I don't think it's a consensus, but the one thing I will say about politics, particularly in this country, the people that ultimately are attracted to political power in the United States, not everybody, but the consensus is that the people who generally want that power are full-blown sociopathic narcissists. Like those are the types of people that want it. And those are the types of people who get it, which is why, again, I get back to Zohran being a complete anomaly in that regard. But as Jen likes to say, he's very, very smooth. He's Obama level smooth.
Oh, yeah.
But he is using it, on the surface, at least it would appear, as a net positive. So we have to take the positives where we can. And now, do I think somebody like Zohran is going to tell people in New York in particular to get into the streets and rock the yellow vests? No. But I also don't think he's going to get in the way of it either if people decide that that's the only way forward.
I think that I would agree with you that I think that social protests can be a very strong support of groups that are trying to make change. You know, the fact that he managed to stop the rent growing up for the rent stabilized apartments, froze the rent for 2 years. A mayor can only do that if they really have the support of people in the population who will come out and support him when he gets the attack, who will vote for him because of that. And I think that was very, very significant that he managed to do that. And so I think he will be supported by social movements. They won't always be on his side, but what he wants to do, they will support.
Well, not only that, but I also believe that you cannot ignore, and this is the whole point of, in my opinion, of your book, and this is the whole point of everything that we do. Everything is a class war. And when you look at the people who are soundly rejecting not just Zohran, but those that are in a tizzy over the fact that the Israel-US alliance is being eradicated as we speak. Doesn't happen overnight, but it's happening. The people who are most vehemently in support of maintaining it and are most vehemently against anything that somebody like Zohran is trying to do are people of a certain class. These are people that are extremely economically comfortable, whether they live on the Upper East Side, whether they live in Chelsea, whether they live on the North Shore of Long Island, whether they live in Westchester or they live in, Bergen County, New Jersey. It doesn't matter. They're all of the same stripes. When I see the people in real estate that are vehemently against any type of rent freeze, these are people who make a lot of money in real estate. So it's very much based on class as far as I can see. And that's what's becoming more and more clear and what I think is breaking down these so-called political dividing lines, race, culture, ideology. So much of that is going out the window and is kind of settling on the class dynamic, which is where I think the Yellow Vest movement really comes into play in its most obvious capacity.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I think that class today is much broader than we used to think working classes, industrial workers or something like that. I think today it includes a lot more people. It's, you can have civil service workers, I don't really think that, I think we need to understand class very more broadly. And I'm not sure that every conflict is so easily, simply defined. But I agree with you that, as I wrote, that class issues are very much the basis for, people like, I really think there's the really up there and then there's everybody else, like the 99%. I think they got that right in a way about what class is about today, which wasn't necessarily what class was about 50 years ago. So I think we need to think of that. And I also think class is a much broader set of issues, that it's also in like the environment, the neighborhoods, the access to healthcare. So they're all battles over what, like you say, what the government is, or what is being spent for people's needs and people's rights.
As we've learned, we have quite a bit of money, but it only seems to go to places that have absolutely no interest in taking care of its citizenry, especially the working class. And I think the American people are getting restless. I do. And
there's no question. Yes.
The issue is, can we organize and get it together, right? It's not a matter of lack of people that are pissed off.
Exactly. And I think people begin to trust each other across some kind of differences of perception. Honestly, I think that's hard in this country, and you can find so many identity divisions, which I'm not saying they don't carry weight. I'm not saying that they don't have meaning for people, but somehow we have to have that lobby, that street corner where we can somehow share some interests. And to me, that's one of the most important things, because what you might say, what you're calling everybody takes from the poor, or everyone takes from all of us, is another word, is neoliberalism, the narrowness, so that everything is reduced to money. The environment doesn't count. It's reduced to money. You can let them extract, just reduced to money. There's nothing that is preserved as human needs and human rights. It's all just commodified, turned into money. And I think that we need to recognize that individual groups and their priorities, but we also need to understand how to work together across those needs. And that's been always the problem in this country, but everywhere.
Last question for me. What are your students like? How do they respond to so much of this? Because again, in so many ways, I know, we're kind of dating ourselves here, but I'm a millennial, Jen's Gen X. You think about the Zoomers and what they're facing right now. You're dealing with students that are between 18 and 22, maybe a few grad students and whatnot. But the consensus is that, they're in a very difficult position at this point. And obviously being in the city kind of makes you grow up a lot faster. So what is the consensus from your students in terms of how they feel about the current direction of the country and what they feel they're going to need to do in order to right the ship from obviously the very dangerous course that we've been set on right now?
I think my students are very, very, it's easy for me to talk to my students because they've come out, as you say, of struggle and suffering. I had a student last semester whose father, she was a very good student. He did very well in the midterm, so I had faith in her, an undergraduate. And then she started disappearing, and she didn't show up, and she didn't come to get her midterm back, and she made appointments with me and failed to come. Finally, at the final, or maybe the day before, she showed up and she was in tears. Her father had been, she was Latina, but a citizen. But her father had been picked up at work because he was undocumented. And he had been swiped off from his workplace in a construction company on Long Island and taken to jail. And they didn't even know where he was for several weeks. And that's why she had just fallen apart in the classroom. And then her father, she and her sister were both in CUNY, the City University, and they both had tried very, very hard. And she said to me, my dad tried all his life for me to be a good student, for me to have a future. That's why they're here. And she's crying and she doesn't want to know she's ready for the final and stuff like that. And I said, just study, because that's what he wanted. Just come back on the day of the final and do what you can. We'll work out your past grades, that you missed 3 weeks. Well, so she did. And she came back and she wasn't crying the next time for the final. And she pulled it together. And I think our students are dealing just exactly with that kind of thing all the time. I mean, I had students during COVID, they were on Zooms telling me that their mom had died from COVID. Our students are in the center of the tragedies that our city is being hit by. At the same time, you can talk to them about how people have tried to change this, about what the different social movements have meant up to now. And they really want to hear about it. They really want to learn. I have tremendous respect for the CUNY students, really.
That is actually a very positive note to end on, because you hear constantly from the powers that be, oh, these kids are just spoiled and they're lazy and they're not doing anything. I mean, Jen, you have 2 Zoomer kids, and I think they turned out okay.
Well, I feel like the jury's still out on the little one, but we'll see. I mean, time will tell, but seemingly they're okay. But yeah, I mean, I think that
all their lives, let me promise you, you can never feel confident. You always have to be helping thinking through. That's the way children are.
Well, right. I mean, I'm sure that, it might look all good to somebody on the outside, but like on the inside, I feel like I'm like hanging on to like the edge of a cliff by my fingernails, but you would meet my kid and be like, oh, what a great kid, right?
And we'd be right. Yeah.
Maybe.
Thank you for being a professor. Thank you for being a writer. And thank you for articulating so much of what has always been, in my opinion, one of the many great aspects of New York. You are old school New York. It's as much as things have changed. New York is very unique in this regard. You have an understanding. New Yorkers kind of have like this sort of banding together in good times and in bad. Obviously, you've experienced recently the Knicks winning the NBA title. And of course, the entire city was enthralled in orange and blue fever. And then obviously, we just had the elections the other day. There's always something going on. And, whether it is Hunter College, whether it is, Fordham, whether it is NYU, there is this sort of, there's this meeting ground that exists in higher education in New York that is very much a part of the city fabric. And it's great to hear that these kids, and this is also another thing. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, tuition-free public college, it used to exist. And you know one of the colleges that was tuition-free? Hunter College was one of those schools.
Absolutely.
So don't think it can't exist again. And that's why
the students had strikes every time that the governor has tried to raise the tuition, and they've been pretty successful.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, what I noticed is, so your book is free, right? Like people can.
Oh, yes.
So I want people to understand that when you go to the link for this book, you download it, right? Like, and you download
exactly.
And it's free.
I put so much effort. I really felt that I was writing about the commons. I was writing about the need for people to have rights, and it had to be available to people. So I worked really, really hard to make it a common right that you download it and it's free. You can also buy the hardback, but it's downloaded.
Right. I saw that. So it's like, and I'm looking at it like, okay, so it's kind of pricey. Oh, I see, because it's free. So yes, if you want a hardcover or something,
a paper that you want the actual solid version, you can buy it, but it's free.
It also goes to show you. It also goes to show you that when you are raised in a mixed economic system, like in South Africa, like in the UK, you have a different mindset and a different understanding, because you also come from two countries that have a legitimate social safety net, universal education and healthcare, which those two countries have, which we do not have. And then you come here and you realize, no, I have to give this book back. I have to give my knowledge back to the people because it's very important. Whereas there's probably quite a few capitalists, especially in New York, who look at you cockeyed like, what the hell are you doing? You got to go out there and make that money. It's like, wait a minute. I'm a tenured professor. I'm doing okay. I don't need to be rich. But that's the delusion that exists within this country, that we're still trying to help people understand that it's okay to be successful even if you're not wealthy. There is such a thing.
Absolutely. And I saw the people of South Africa fight for what they have today. That's a long story. And now they do have many of these things that certainly were never available to most of the residents of South Africa. They had to fight for that, just like the Americans have to fight for many things today.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, be more like Professor Susser and less like Elon Musk. That's all I got to say.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much. It was good to meet you.
Okay. Yes. Good. Good luck. Thank you.
Well,
lovely.
It
was lovely, like I say, about all the people.
If you've enjoyed that conversation, which we hope you have, please go over to patreon.com/revolutionary change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty, despite our heavily suppressed yet still growing channel. We have a lot of super chats, so let's get to them. Veronica Kerg, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. We really appreciate it. Jim Taleb with the $5, always a pleasure. Mark J with the $5. This world is a hell for many people and for animals because living things are regarded as mere commodities. Thank you, Peter and Jen. Very morbid, but we'll take it. Yes, that unfortunately is the consensus, but we're doing everything in our capacity to try to change that fortune as we speak. Gurley Flynn with the $9.99. No justice, no profit. That's another way of looking at it. I'll go with that.
Yeah.
Libertarian Social Dem with the $4.99. Someone should tell Megyn Kelly that a Haitian discovered Chicago and her Orientalist demonization of Haitians is wrong. Also, demonizing Somalis is bad. We will discuss this with Sheila Sherfilis McCormick, who was the first elected Haitian to the U.S. Congress on Thursday. And
did somebody bring up the Megalodon? Did somebody bring up the Megalodon? Okay. Yeah, somebody should tell her a whole lot of things.
Yeah, she's got a really nasty mouth, to say the least. Very privileged, bigoted, nasty mouth, nonetheless. A big, super duper shout out to
you, Nancy,
with the 5. What is the highest level called again?
I forget which one it is, but it's our highest level. It's really nice. Thank you so much. It's so appreciated.
Very much so. Thank you, Nancy. Libertarian Social Dem with the $1.99. Where in Christianity does it teach
Bible? Where does it teach white people are better and own us? Nowhere. That's
in the Schofield Bible.
First of all, again, for those of us that are not believers, it's a book that's written by people that are trying to keep a whole bunch of other people in line.
Of course.
So, and even in there, it wasn't that blatant. Agreed.
And he wants another $1.99. Europe has a successful school choice that America doesn't. Oh, of course. They actually care about education in Europe in a way that they don't here, because, again, the ultimate goal in the United States is to always go where the capital goes. And if the capital always goes to the likes of, let's say, Walmart, and especially for public education, is Walmart and Amazon, the private school kids are the ones who get to move on to bigger and better opportunities that don't involve them being paid a measly wage and working like a slave. This is how they maintain the system. And Libertarian Social Dem with the $1.99 one more time. Most of Europe has unions that libertarians approve of. Yes, it's called collective bargaining. It is actually something we should all be embracing, not rejecting. Libertarian Social Dem with the $4.99 one last time. Zohran needs to flatten Trump to bring back old school Trump 2000, who wanted single payer and a one-time 15% wealth tax to pay off debt. That sounds like a really great idea. I really like that Zohran. You know what it is? I think Trump he appreciates leaders who get shit done. That's just what it is with him. Like, he sees Zohran as a worthy foe. He probably sees Scheinbaum as a worthy foe, that they just know how to get shit done. That's what I see. That's where it really comes from. Same thing with Putin. Same thing with Xi. He just looks at guys that are kind of kicking ass and taking names. Just my thought.
I don't think he thinks that much about it.
Deep green. He doesn't think much, period. Deep green. Thank you for the $20 super chat. Hence why I joined CPI personally. Got tired of being duped by the duopoly. Being in that organization as anti-imperialist has been great to talk about our experiences and learn from each other across the aisles. That's awesome. Yeah. And that is the future. Because on Thursday, we're going to be speaking with our friend. We're not just speaking with Sheila Sherfilis McCormick, who is coming on to talk about the congressional race against Wasserman Schultz, Elijah Manley, and the like. But we're also going to be speaking with our friends, Keaton and Russell, over at Due Dissonance. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about is the significance of the congressional race of Shama Sawant, who is running against Adam Smith. And what we've noticed is that a substantial portion of the so-called independent media sphere are not addressing that race. And the election is in just over a month. Just over a month. So we're hitting the home stretch of that primary, and very few people are addressing it at this point. And what that tells me is way too many people are caught up in this idea that she is not running as a Democrat, so we can't support her, or we can't address her because the people that make sure that our channel stays on the corporate algorithm says that we can't address it. Well, we will address it. Jen.
What was there a question?
Well, I just figured you would say something since.
Well, I mean, look, we're gonna do our cross-pollination with Keaton and Russell, so that'll be fun. And I know they're also Shama supporters. So yeah, I mean, whatever we can do to help her. And yeah, for me, it is somewhat mixed because on the one hand, yeah, I'd like to help her, but on the other hand, I'm still at the point where I just think that the entire electoral process is sort of just not the center focus of what needs to be happening. So,
No,
but yes, I do support Shama, and I do think that having somebody like her would also help facilitate the revolution.
Mhm. Now, we haven't talked about the World Cup, but we will talk about it now.
Thankfully.
Thankfully. This has nothing to do with the results of the games, keep in mind. I'm not gonna jump on that bandwagon. However, I do want to say that it is imperative that we do not ignore how the United States is being viewed abroad because of our unholy alliance with the state of Israel and the hell that we put the Iranian national team through to come here, what we did to them. Here is what one of their star players had to say.
Disaster World Cup. Disaster. Point of charge. I mean FIFA. They have to solve every problem here, but unfortunately they couldn't solve since the beginning. Mr. Infantino came to our changing room first game and he said it's just the beginning, but it's group stage finish tomorrow. And we don't have our logistic people here. They don't have a visa. How possible we always have to travel to Tijuana? We love people of the Mexico. We love Tijuana. It's so good. They are.
Yes. And can we just address the fact that this is another example of Scheinbaum outshining Trump once again?
She outshines him by just existing. I'm just appreciating the man candy that you're putting up in front of me. So keep going.
Yeah, he's a handsome fella.
You think?
So humble people. We love them. But as a professional players, professional competition, it's not right. Yeah? It's about our opinion because now we have traveled again going to Tijuana again. So without recovery, without nothing, it's not fair. But by our opinion, it's not fair.
If is it fair for the FIFA? Okay, good to them. But it's not fair. Who wants to help us? Who? If they want us to be out, okay, let's out. Let's get out. But that's not fair. We don't have recovery. We don't have any logistic people here to help us. What we say? We always complain about these things, but no one helps. No one.
You know, anytime there has been any type of athletic competition involving, as much as I hesitate to refer to them as a country, but let's just call it what it is. Anytime there are Israeli athletes competing in an event like FIFA, you know what I've noticed, Jen?
What do you notice?
They are always as defiant as their government. There has never once been, in recent memory, a single athlete who competes for Israel that says, I'm only here to compete because this is where I'm from. I don't share the same beliefs as my government. We have our differences, etc., etc. There are people who support Iran or support elements of Iran's government, and they'll say, I have my disagreements, but I'm here representing the Iranian people. And there is a clear distinction. We have never said that the Iranian government is benevolent and that they do incredible things. But if you're asking us to choose between Iran and Israel, there is nothing to think about. And any Americans who think that there is any competition here, that includes some friends of mine who don't realize that they're living in the capital, not in the 12th ward. Is that what it was?
District 12.
District 12. This is the same issue. So you can see how disillusioned they must be as a team, knowing that the whole point, the whole name of the game is cruelty. Can't get proper rest, can't get proper training, and they lost. They were knocked out of the tournament yesterday. And now I'm not saying that Iran was going to win the World Cup.
Now, I know nothing about their talent level. Like, I know nothing about any of that, right? Like, I don't care. But I don't care about any of these sporty things. I think a lot of them end up costing the wrong people money and benefiting the wrong people and all sorts of problems. But isn't the premise of these games that concept of no borders in sports, sort of like the Olympics? Like, isn't the premise of these games sort of like this global communal vibe, despite the politics and despite the bullshit? So the fact that FIFA is such a representation of the bullshit sort of defeats the purpose, in my opinion, of these types of events. But I'm not into the World Cup or other similar types of grand spectacle events.
Fair enough, but the point still stands.
We have to fight against everything here. I don't know people want or no, but as we see it by our perspective, yeah, they like that, I think. How possible now 90 minutes you play by lot of stress, lot of this thing in our shoulders, then we have to go back again to Tijuana. You imagine we pass the group stage, tomorrow we get our luck and we pass the group stage, but we don't have any recoveries. How possible this? As I said, Infantino first game came and said we will solve every problem here, but actually FIFA did nothing. Our logistic doesn't hear. Yeah, you see, we don't have media. Our media. Where is our media? You can check. No media here. No media. No, I don't know, kitmans. No one. We in our religion doesn't accept that, but we respect all of the LGBT people. That's their own idea. It's not about us. We are here to play football.
Why did they even ask him that? Stop it. We don't need to watch this.
Guys.
We don't need to watch that response because that was a stupid question to ask him. That's total. You know what that is? That's baiting him to get a response so that you can put out there some sort of idea like, oh, the Iranians are so theocratic or so primitive in their beliefs. And you can continue to other them by asking a question that you know the answer to, and it's irrelevant. Why is she asking a fucking soccer player what his thoughts are on gender orientation and shit?
Yeah. And you
that's
know,
so frustrating.
This is exactly the point where
exactly we should never be able to host again.
Well, this is why it's not journalism. People who ask questions like that, they're not they have an agenda. And let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, as long as you are not violating a person's civil rights, people have the right to be against gays, to be against trans, to be against whatever they want.
But why would you ask a football player, what purpose does it serve to ask a football player who's there to talk about how his team was treated at the World Cup, what his position is on sexual orientation? What am I missing? Right. They hate the gays, so you should stop. I don't.
What is the point of going into again? We were talking earlier about how many generations does it take before generational wealth eventually turns you into a sack of potatoes, where you're simply incapable of having natural survival skills. You can say what you want about Joe Kennedy and the tyrannical bastard that he was, but he made his kids go out and either give back or earn it themselves. And that's why Jack Kennedy, Bobby, even Ted, they did their part. They did their part in a way that they didn't need to necessarily, but they did, and they probably chose to as well. Whereas if you look at somebody like Jack Schlossberg, Jack Kennedy Schlossberg, excuse me, you've reached a point where there is no fight anymore. And the idea that there is this defense of Israel on the grounds that, oh, they support the LGBTQ community. Do they really, though, Jen?
Ziohel?
Yeah.
Well, gay marriage is not legal.
That's an inconvenient truth. That's an inconvenient truth.
Yeah, and there, it's not. They make it sound like somehow even the secular state of Ziohel is just so progressive and open-minded. No, they're not.
No,
they're not.
And in conclusion to that conversation, I do
stop using gays to justify your shit. You know what? The gays don't like that. How about that? Fucking gays don't want to be used to be like your pink washing, rainbow washing shit that you justify somehow hurting another people.
Bingo. And remember, the whole point of talking about it in that context is always to draw attention away from the real issue, which is the capital equation. It always has been, it always will be. And the similarity between that question from that journalist and this question to Zohran cannot be more concise as far as I can see.
And the idea of a Jewish state, Israel is a Jewish state, that's in the charter. That's the way it is now. Do you support that?
I've said time and again that I support the state of Israel as a state with equal rights. I believe that any state that preferences...
But as a Jewish state is the question.
I think any state that privileges one religion over the other is one that I can't tell you I support, whether it be Israel or Saudi Arabia or anywhere else. And a lot of that comes back to a fundamental belief that we should all be considered equal no matter what our faith is.
Perfect answer. He's smooth as it can be. It's infuriating to me that anybody is asking the mayor of New York, okay, his position on a genocidal entity in West Asia. Seriously, this man was just elected as mayor of New York. Why are they doing that? They're doing that for the same reason that they asked the football player what his position was on the LGBTQ community. Mm-hmm. There's no rational reason. There's no reasonable reason. You don't have to know that about him. It's completely irrelevant to his position. If he were being, let's say hypothetically, he were being vetted to be the ambassador to Ziohel, then that would be a relevant question. But for the mayor of New York, it isn't. It's a gotcha question, and it's stupid. And you know what? He is way too fucking smooth for that person.
Yeah, they all are. And this is, again, another example of why the Zio state is going to fail, because it's failing all over the place. And this brings us back to what I thought was one of the best moments from the World Cup. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw this lady. Her name, because I mean, at the time we didn't know her name, but eventually we were able to discover who she was, and her name is Siri Ni Jeribin.
Oh, that you butchered that, and I don't even know what it looks like. I'm scared to see what
I tried. I did my best.
Look how cute she is.
I was a nurse in Gaza. I volunteered in Gaza. I've seen what happens. There's a genocide. Free Palestine.
Now,
how
why did she
do
Yeah, she's a very pretty girl. And so why did this lady do this? What was her motivation? It turns out that there were 3 Israeli flag holding idiots,
Of course there
like
were.
basically like standing over there.
Mhm.
And what were they doing at this football match of the World Cup? Israel wasn't competing there, but they felt the need to show up with the flags. Why? Why? What were you
Is she
hoping to
Scottish?
accomplish?
Did somebody catch
Yes.
that accent? Okay.
She's a Scotch. She's a Scotch.
You know I do. You do know I like me the Scots.
Now, I want to take this a step further, and I want to remind people of one of the big problems that exists in our culture today, the incel culture, the ones that are
That you're
obsessed.
attracting left and right with pontificating with Pete on Saturday nights, that incel culture that hate me because they're freaking misogynist and are scared of women.
The guys that are attracted to Asmongold and Fuentes, I want to remind you that this is the type of language. Just saw what her message was. This attractive, kind-hearted woman who's a nurse holding her baby.
A nurse who served in Gaza.
As a nurse. Yeah, again, serving in a combat zone. And, well, actually, forget it. Yeah, well, I guess, what would you call it? Because this is not a war. This is a genocide. Attacking women and children, but she was in a danger zone, is what I would call it. These are some
She
of the.
was in the middle. She went into a Holocaust to try to help the people that are being Holocausted. That's what she did.
These are the responses from a slew of different people who apparently didn't like what she said. Apparently, what she said was offensive. That's one. That's 2.
Not a single substantive comment.
Britain for Trump. Yeah, sure.
How dumb would you have to be?
That thing has never been a nurse in Gaza. That thing. You see, when men talk like that about women like that, to me, that's always a guy who could never get a woman like that. That's
well,
what
those are not men. They're not men.
No.
They identify as men, but they're not men. It's ironic that they mock the concept of identification, and yet they so strongly identify with something that they aren't. So fascinating.
What's with that shit? You are a whore of Arabs?
Well, these are the men. So pay attention, when men say not all men, we don't know whether you're that or this. See, because these guys, they're all out there and they're all representing. So that's out there. So yes, unbelievable.
Nursing a hangover, and the only thing she has volunteered is her shitty opinion. Need the attention now that she's got a bairn and the blonde hair doesn't work anymore. Attention, please, over here.
She's got a baby and the hair, whatever it is. Is that what it is? I don't know.
I think that's it. Yeah, maybe.
Where do you find she's unfit to be a parent? Who are these people? Oh my God. That's gross.
Yeah. Well, these are the types of comments where I don't think these are coming from bot accounts. I think they're coming from people specifically that are incels, that are they whenever they see a woman that is, and again, this is also the thing you have to remember about attractive women that do good. They can have a profound impact on whether people start to listen and respond in a positive way to a certain issue. In this case, she's a nurse.
Yes. Yes. Yes, but no. We have to, I am not anti-man. I'm really not. Trust me. Here's the thing. I like men. I really do. In fact, that's been one of the key problems throughout my life is the amount that I like men. So the fact that you think I'm anti-man is so hilarious to me. But if you could come up with a way for me to like do that, it would have made a whole lot of my life a lot easier. So yeah, but it's just funny that somebody would think I'm anti-man.
Now, I don't know if you can read this or not, but we're going to end with this guy, Jimmy Rintz, if that's his name. Sure, a blonde white woman with young children went to Gaza to help terrorists who'd kill her in a heartbeat. Actually, we've met quite a few nurses that actually did go there that have kids and were taking great risks to their own lives by trying to help people in need.
And guess what? I also have known of blonde women doctors that have gone over and volunteered in Gaza with Doctors Against Genocide.
Yep.
And yeah, so yes, there are people that do that, and they also happen to be attractive physically. It's fascinating, I know, but it is possible.
There's a lot of things that are possible if you're just willing to consider.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Piano Man. Thank you. I also comment on cute girls too, but that's neither here nor there.
But again, like I said, there is something to be said for somebody who is easy on the eyes, who is doing good, because the fact of the matter is, they can get more casuals, if you will, to respond. They can get more people that maybe, generally speaking, are not interested in getting involved. And now they do get involved. And that does matter. It matters more than you could possibly imagine. And so for that, we are extremely grateful for her. We are grateful for the Iranian football club and all the things that they've put themselves through. Because when the empire is falling apart, it's not going to be pretty. In fact, it could be downright dirty, ugly, and scary. And that commentary, unfortunately.
I am so here for it. I am so here for it.
With that said, we've got one more segment to cover this evening. And this is going to kind of bring it full circle because it's one part embarrassment. It's another part Zio Hunter.
Okay. So what are we, I mean, so this is like a twofer situation is what we're talking about? All right.
The Great American State Fair.
Okay. The Great American State Fair
has been an absolute disaster, to say the least. This thing started on Thursday. We're now in 4th of July week. And this is pretty embarrassing when you consider how few people have shown up. But
it looks like a shitty ass fair is what it looks like. And I've been to a good state fair. If anybody's ever been to a good state fair, I've been to Indiana. I know you've been to Iowa, right? Like there are certain states that it's just so good.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
This is Washington, D.C. It's not hard to get to this place, but this is where what we're looking at.
See, it's not good. So apparently, each state it's done like an expo, like a world expo, but it's like so each state has a thing, but it looks so sterile and so institutional, and there's no personality whatsoever, and the food doesn't even look like good fair food, which the whole point of a good fair is good fair food. So
I just thought about this, and I thought about how one of the downsides of capitalism, one of the worst aspects of capitalism, is the commodification of everything and the commodification of food. And when you think about just how cheap and unhealthy the food fair fried butter. Exactly.
I am here for it all. All of it. Do not start with your naysay about the good stuff. But this is not good stuff.
Yeah,
that is not no.
Yeah. Could you imagine how sick some people are going to get from eating that stuff?
Well, everybody needs to learn how to state fair, and there's a way to do it. There's rookie moves. There's things that you have to do in moderation. There's things that you have to do to prepare. I mean, I can't lay it all out for you right now. But what I will say is that you pick the best thing that they are most known for, and that's your first go-to, and that you get that out of the way before you have the other things, which are fillers. So, for example, San Antonio during Fiesta, which is a week, 10-day long thing, I know that I'm eating a corn dog at the King William Fair because it's the best corn dog ever. So I kind of will build the day around that. You know what I mean? You just got to have a strategy, people. Have a strategy.
Funnel cake has always been a very popular option. In fact, I remember funnel cake very well when I was young, going to Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey, because that was the tasty treat that Pop would always buy for us when we were leaving the theme park.
Good.
And it was, Jen, let me tell you, that funnel cake was not only hot, fried, and crispy, but it was bathed in powdered sugar. Bathed in it.
As well it should be. You say that like that's some big thing that years ago you ate something like that, which you probably only barely ate it. It's probably like you probably took like tasted it.
That's why I'm so pretty.
That's pathetic. It's pathetic. It looks pathetic.
Yeah.
This is like his what he had that birthday parade where there was nobody there. Yep. Not this last birthday where there was like a wrestling dome, but the birthday when there was like a parade and the military parade that nobody came to. He's the emperor with no clothes. It's hilarious. Who's going to that? Who's going to that? I can't fathom anybody would travel to go to that. I can't fathom that anybody would go to that shy of people that live in the district and they're there, so they might as well just go see it. I can't think of anybody that would actually go out of their way or travel to go to that as a destination.
The level of criminality that we are now exposed to on a regular basis, just the things that we've seen. The thing that you didn't see in this clip, I'm not going to drag another one up because there's no point. It's as pathetic as can be. There is a pavilion at this event, and at that pavilion, they're playing music in front of nobody.
We listen and we do not judge. We don't food shame here. Thank you.
Andre, we can't all look abolitious like you, handsome fella.
We listen and we do not judge.
So at one of the pavilions, they have the American flag side by side with the Israel flag. And this is supposed to be America's 250th celebration event. I seriously hope somebody burns that Israel flag or tears it down or does something with it, because that's what should happen.
Don't look at me. I already burned an Israeli flag.
You lived to tell about it, at least for now you did. When we say that the Israelis should never have a moment's peace, ever, we mean that. That means wherever they go, wherever they identify themselves, this is what needs to happen every single time.
You baby killer.
Fucking bitch, fucking British bitch.
Literally, I told you I'm American, unfortunately. Palestine.
I give you free. I give you for free.
It's not yours to give away for free.
I give you for free.
It's not yours.
I pay you to take it.
You can't do that because it's not yours. Yeah, free Palestine. Free Palestine from genocidal baby killers.
don't know shit about Palestinians.
I don't. Actually, I have Palestinian students that had to leave Palestine because they were being genocided by maniacs in the IDF.
Palestinians don't even have statehood. They don't have any passports.
Oh, okay. So they don't have passports because you don't allow them to have passports. So therefore, what? So what?
This, of course, is so ironic because it again reaffirms the stereotype about a typical Zio scum. They are very loud and aggressive towards women.
Oh, yes.
In a way that they would never be towards a man if he was saying the same thing. And this isn't just one man. These are two men trying to gang up on this girl, telling her that she doesn't know what she's talking about. But she does.
This never happens to me.
Well, you live in the middle of nowhere.
No, but when I lived in Plantation, I didn't always live in the middle of nowhere. This never happens for me.
Well, you said that you showed up your scummy Pilates people.
Oh, well, I confronted them about talking shit about me personally. But I have never had this. Yeah, well, that dumb bitch was actually lying to my face and I called her out on it. But this is like a whole other thing. Yeah, and that was also woman on woman. I would love the opportunity for one of these micro penises to approach me. I really would.
They have no passports. They can't even travel. Don't you feel bad about that? They have no passports. Don't you feel bad about that? They can't travel like you do. They're just normal people.
How do you know that we don't know shit? I was in Egypt working with Palestinians that were losing their family members because they were being bombed by maniacs like you. Because you were bombing them. Because you were bombing them. Yeah, free Palestine. No, I'm not going to shut up because you're a genocidal maniac who bombs children and then tries to come to Vietnam and like go on vacation. You're a war criminal. War criminal, right in front of me.
Go, girl.
Actually, yeah, I see many war criminals right in front of me.
Love her.
No, I'm not gonna shut the fuck up because you're a genocidal maniac that thinks that you can go to Asia and not be held accountable for your actions.
I love this queen. I love you. Who is this? She's adorable.
I'm not sure, but yeah.
She's clearly American and she's clearly in Southeast Asia. So yeah.
But notice where they go. They go to Vietnam. They go to a country that is for all intents and purposes, I mean, you could say that they're at the bare minimum, they're a socialist country. Maybe they're not.
I don't know enough about it one way or the other. I really don't.
But here's the thing. Vietnam, whether you think they're communist or not, they do not have the same market economy that a lot of these other countries do, where they wouldn't just be able to get away without being noticed. See, the Israelis, they're trying to go to places that don't have very high GDP, and they're basically going to bribe them to let them into the country. This is what's happening with that small community.
And buy small towns and buy up the infrastructure and create their own little communities in these impoverished places because they can basically go in there and afford to buy them out.
Correct. That's what's happening here. Vietnam has been one of those places where they've been frequenting.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Sleaze rallies. Yeah, exactly. They think they're going to get away with this, but they're not.
No.
Everyone's going to get put on blast, and they are going to be humiliated for the rest of their lives. They're lucky they're not getting rounded up and put in internment camps and then hung in the town square. Not to say that that might not happen one day, but for the time being, this is a reminder that they will not live in peace, and they should never live in peace.
No.
No, I will not shut the fuck up. I will keep speaking up about it. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. From genocidal maniacs. And it enrages me that you get to bomb children. Yeah, it enrages me. That's why I'm shaking. because my Palestinian students had to leave their home. I'm not scared without your weapons. Yeah, of course, because I'm a human being with a soul. It makes sense that you don't know what that is, because it means losing your fucking soul to kill children. That's what it means. Yeah, did you serve in the IDF? Did you serve in the IDF? Yeah, so you killed children. You bombed fucking babies. Of course. Of course he killed children. What the fuck? What is wrong with you? Insane.
You can't understand what is wrong with these people, because it's at this point, it's generations of inbred psychopathy. It will be studied. This will be studied. The mentality of these people will be studied like people studied the Third Reich. Seriously. Yeah. Because this is so psychopathic that it will, generations in the future will have to question how did that happen? So yeah, the psychopathy of these people will be studied.
That lady did an amazing job.
She was awesome.
I'm going to check really quick to see if we've got her name. Give a shout out. Heck, I'd invite her on the podcast. Be like, hey, that's how everybody needs to be treated.
Well, it depends on where she is. We'll have time zone conflict with her.
Yes. Let's see. So it's part of the, Philistina. Could that be her?
I don't know.
Brooke
That
Barney?
could be, but it could have been posted from a site that posts multiple.
I think this might be her. Her name is Brooke Barney. I believe that's her. Yeah, it looks like her. Okay.
All right, is that her? So Brooke, I'm a big fan. Brooke. Shout out to you. You go. That was awesome.
More like Brooke, less like
Be more
genocide.
like Brooke.
Yes. We want to thank you again for all coming on here tonight. Again, patreon.com/revolutionary change. We do have a few more super chats to get to before we get out for the evening. Actually, I think it may only be one. Could be wrong. But that, of course, is our good friend, Willie Bragg. Guys, subscribe to the Bragg Show on YouTube. Willie Bragg with the $5. Revolutionary Change into Dissonance, my two favorite podcasts. Thursday night, guys. Thursday night's a big one. We got a really awesome show, as we always say.
Now, let me explain something, and I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to tell them this. And I have told you that you need to make sure that they understand on Sheila's team that we are going to be talking about the Israel lobby with her, and she's going to have to answer for that. And then I am okay with her explaining any of the other stuff, whatever, but I am not letting her be on here and not question her as to what her plan is going forward with accepting money from the Israel lobby.
You got to face up to it, Sheila. The fact of the matter is, even if you think that it's not an issue, or you don't have to address it because it's not a key issue in the district you're trying to represent, the fact of the matter is, Wasserman Schultz is making it a big issue, and it will become a very big problem for the citizens of that district if she gets in there. And
look, I have communicated with her my position on this, but I'm not going to have her come on as a candidate onto our show and not have to address what her intention is regarding accepting money from the Israel lobby. Okay, that's just where we are.
And that, of course, is why, listen, we do, above everything else, we do not want Debbie to be in federal power anymore.
Look, David, we're not going to go light on her. And I do want her to explain what the ethics investigation is about. I want her to give everybody her position on that. I think that's reasonable. And she's going to need to account for what her current position is regarding Palestine and a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, we still prefer her to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So let's all maintain perspective. Okay. And keep our eye on,
And make no mistake, guys, if this were any other circumstances, the support wouldn't be there. The whole goal is to stop Debbie. And with all due respect to another candidate in the race who's getting boosted incessantly all over the place, Elijah Manley is not winning that seat. Like, let's just be very clear.
And I feel like, and I'm seeing so many of our fellow content creators that are not from Florida, don't know the district. And of course, they're promoting him because of that Track APAC thing, which do not get Peter and I started on the Track APAC thing. But so the way they're making it look like somehow, not only does it make him look viable, but it makes him look principled in a way that he isn't necessarily principled. The reason Elijah hasn't taken money from AIPAC is they've never offered it to him.
Have they never dug in on any of the comments that he's made about being Jewish and Israel?
Honestly, no. And that's the thing. They're literally just looking at that green AIPAC tracker and against Debbie's and saying, oh, let's get behind Elijah. He can't win that seat. He's not winning that seat. All he's going to do is create a situation where Debbie wins that seat.
You also have to ask yourself, and the election is less than 2 months away, you have to ask yourself this question, and we're going to leave on this note, and we'll address it, hopefully, assuming Sheila does show up on Thursday.
Oh, great. He was on with Destiny. Of course he was.
Well, of course. Because, again, there is no... The thing you have to remember...
all that popularity, I'm sorry, that he's
That's what it's about. It's not a popularity contest. It's not
he won't get the votes. That's what people don't understand. He could be getting all of this like content creator recognition and all of this coverage. It doesn't translate into votes, and it doesn't translate into money that he doesn't have.
I want you all to ask yourself this question. Now, the latest FEC report will be dropped most likely on Thursday, would be my guess.
More than you know. More than you could even friggin' know.
And so if you've raised $750,000 and you are currently sitting on $20,000, meaning that you've gone through almost 96, 97% of the money that you've raised, something's wrong. Deeply wrong. That's a situation where if a person is actually trying to win, they're not trying to win. And either they don't know that they're a useful idiot, they're using it as a personal piggy bank, or they're incompetent, or maybe it's all three. I don't know.
Yes. AIPAC tracker is shill for Democrat establishment politics.
I don't agree with that.
People that you don't have to. The people that run that will always funnel people back into the party. The people that run that are from the brand new Congress, but we can work within the party mentality. So yes, at the end of the day, AIPAC tracker is going to promote Democrats. That's why they didn't cover Thomas Massie. That's why they are absolutely.
That's not true. They did cover Thomas Massie.
Okay, because apparently.
Here's what I'm going to say about Track AIPAC. I would say this about any organization. I think Track AIPAC does do good work. However, if you do not address the race, and if you do not support full-throated with money, resources, and effort to get Shama Sawan elected in Washington's 9th District against Adam Smith, who isn't just any run-of-the-mill Democratic, corrupt, Zionist scumbag. This guy's worse than Wasserman Schultz.
He just wrote that 224.
He wrote the bill to combine the U.S. and Israeli military. He wrote it. If you do not have all hands on deck to get Shama Sawan elected.
So where have they been on that, Peter? Where has Corey been on that? Have they mentioned that race? Do they come out against him? So then don't tell me that they're not a shill for the Democratic Party. You guys want to know about AIPAC tracker someday? We'll get into that, but we don't need to now.
All I can tell you is that I have spoken with somebody.
We've had Wally on. I like him. He's
Wally's great. We love Wally. I've personally spoken with somebody very high up in Shama's orbit, in left circles, and with the exception of us, Due Dissonance, Chris Hedges, and I think maybe like one other person, no one, and I do mean no one, has been covering Shama's campaign.
Has Sabby had her on? Because Sabby probably would be happy to have
I
her
think
on.
Sabby did. I think, well, yeah, maybe Sabby was the other one.
I was gonna, because Sabby will always cover
RBN, yeah, they support, well, RBN, Sabby, they support Shama.
Okay.
But in terms of any of the really large channels, nobody's covered her. Nobody.
So then why would you say, when I say that I do find AIPAC Tracker to ultimately be a Dem Party shill, you're like, you don't agree with that? Okay, but we know who they are and we know what they do.
Yes. What I'm saying is that I'm not saying that they don't do good work. What I am saying is that the line is always drawn at, but you're doing good work within the confines of the Democratic Party. You're not going to step outside.
Katie would probably have Shama on.
Yeah,
Katie probably would. I think I would think Katie's had Shama on in the past before, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. And Kim probably would too. Well, maybe we can help facilitate that. Kim would probably be happy to have Shama. Kim would have Shama.
Yeah.
Oh, Sabby Sunday. Sabby said she's gonna have her on again. Okay, yeah, I would think so. Yeah, Chris Hedges, of course. Well, they're friends.
Yeah, but this is, like I said, if you want to know where people stand, if you really want to know where they're at,
are they supporting her?
Do they support Shama Sawant? Full stop. And if the answer is no, or they don't give you an answer, then you understand why the system's broken beyond repair. Because this isn't a maybe. This isn't a yes. This is a you're insane and you're working against the interests of the people of this country if you're not supporting Shama Sawant, as far as I'm concerned. There is no gray area here.
Accord, Lord, I'm not understanding what you mean. Katie, best looking bulldog on YT, and Kim is best looking Oompa Loompa on TV, on YouTube. What does that mean?
I don't even understand that. Yeah,
I don't understand that either, but we're not going to talk crap about friends.
They're both very attractive women, and they do a great job at what they do. So yeah,
I don't know what that means, unless there's some other reference. Well, I don't know, because those things are so unrelated. Bulldog, Oompa Loompa, like there might be something to it other than, I don't know what we're missing.
Anyway, that's where we stand. Our goal is to do what most people on the left refuse to do, and that is be concise and strategic in what needs to be done in order to facilitate the changes that we seek. If you want to change things dramatically, you get out Wasserman Schultz and you get in Shama Sawant. And if you're not on board with that, then you're part of it.
You're not on our team. And that is the point about AIPAC Tracker.
Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. We love you all. We appreciate you all. We will see you Thursday.
And free Palestine.
Good night, guys.